Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I'm Kenda Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have Stacy. Stacy has a bomb drop of June 14th, 2022 and a date of marriage of 2004. She has a clinging boomerang who is a high energy replayer. She says, my MLCer says that he's exhausted by his much younger alienator. They've lived together for a year, and the affair started in November of 2021. So bomb drop was when he moved out then, because it is just over a year. She says, and he's near ready to be done with her. He has broached the idea of moving home and staying on the couch in the basement. I'm just following his lead and trying to adhere to smart contact the best I can. How can I best support him as he considers this big move while protecting myself and the progress I've made in the past year? Okay, Stacy, so there's a few things that I want you to know about. First thing, it's only been a year. The affair started in November 2021, but bomb drop, unless you found out earlier and you're only counting bomb drop because that's when he moved out, bomb drop, you are 12 months out. And even if you're 18 months out, it's still the early days, and typically, MLC gets worse before it gets better. Next, he's lived with her for this full year, but how has their conflict been? How have they broken up multiple times? And since he continues to live with her, have they broken up like he sleeps on the couch or goes away for a night, or break up but make up right away so it doesn't really end up as a move out? How high conflict has it been? Has it been that way the whole time? How has she reeled him back in? Because now, if he leaves and fully gets out, that doesn't mean he or she won't reel the other back in again and again. Especially with limerence. Let's say he's been in limerence since November of 2021. Limerence can last up to 3 years. And so it doesn't mean it's over. It can be fading. It can be going into a different phase. But emotional blackmail can also take over. And it can be just as strong. Emotional blackmail has barbed claws. So you get your claws in, and when you try and back them out, they're barbed, and you rip more coming out. You do more damage. And so they don't want to. They feel that, oh, it's going to be worse if I have to let go of this, if I have to give her up. It will be worse. She will make it bad for me. She's made threats, whatever it is. Or I'll just feel more guilty. So you're going to be dealing with a lot of that. And so you can let him come home, but that doesn't mean he's going to stay. The next thing I have is he has suggested, or he's broached the idea of moving home and staying on the couch. Why? For what purpose? Is he just done that to use the house as a crash pad until he gets a place? Or does he consider this, I'm moving home, but I know that I shouldn't be in the bedroom yet. I haven't earned that yet. What is it? What is his purpose and motivation? Why do you want to come here? Do you want to only come here because you don't have a place to go and you don't have the money for your own place? I want that answered from him. You might know the answer, but it needs to be discussed. Because your goal, you want him back. Your goal is to have a reconciled marriage, and that's not going to be happening. If he comes home now, MLCers come home broken. So you get that, especially if they're a clinging boomerang. But also, he's coming home prematurely. Now, there's another thing to be warned about. If he were to come home now, sometimes they come home and we yank them out of or they yank themselves, but they can be yanked out of the front of the tunnel. That's how I describe it as. They go in later. And by later, I mean years. I don't mean in 2 months. If they go back in 2 months, it's the same crisis. 10 years later, they go in and they have a worse crisis. And in that instance, you don't come home and you think you have an at-home MLC, or you think everything is healed. You think you're better. Oftentimes, you avoid therapy in that situation, but not always. 10 years later, they are back for a worse crisis because they didn't reintegrate the pieces of themselves they needed to. They didn't solve the problems of the crisis the first time. So that's another warning for you. Now, I am not saying don't let him come home. I'm not advising you on either account. I should be one to speak if I did, because I let mine come home 8 times and I don't regret it. I didn't have children, so I knew that I wasn't going to be putting them through the trauma of in and out, in and out. And I knew I could handle it. I knew I could make myself and get myself to a detached place. So the question that you're answering, that last one, is the right one. How can I support him as he considers the move? But this is the key, while protecting myself and my progress, the progress I've made. Because that's one of the questions I asked my mentor is, what's going to happen if I let him come home right now? I think this was, it's hard to remember when he came home 8 times. I think the time I was asking this might have been a year and a half in. I think I was asking her this question in October of 2006. And she said, your progress was slow. She might have said stop, but I think she said slow. I had been making such a lot of progress, and I could have, this might have been October of 2005 in the beginning, but it might have been 2006 by then. Your progress will slow down. It will be more of a challenge because you'll be paying attention to him. And not even because you don't want to, but you have another person in the household. And mine was very high needs. If I wanted to go out for, I just needed to escape from the tension and go for a walk or go to the bookstore where they had a nice, lovely fountain. I like to sit there and just download kind of. So he would, where are you going? Why are you going? And if I told him I was going to that bookstore, he went there once when I had a flat tire and he saw the kind of like those coexist stickers up above. And it's like, oh my God, oh my God. And he made like devil signs as he walked in. He was all nervous and it's a very peaceful place. And then so I'm like, I don't want to have to deal with, are you going there? Are you going to shop? I didn't usually buy things. I just wanted to get out. And sometimes it was just going for a walk, but sometimes it was like, you know what? I'm going out and I don't need to tell you. You lost the right from the way he's behaving. Sometimes, you just get out. And that's what's going to be hard sometimes. I like that he said moving home and staying on the couch or in the basement. I will tell you, I'd go for the basement. Set it up as a whole apartment if that's possible. Because the couch is not going to work. We did those things. And every person's situation has its own axis of issue. And I don't mean pre-issues, but within this crisis of itself. And ours was what you're describing here. So I don't know that that's yours. Ours was he kept coming home without transitioning somewhere else first. And we tried transitioning. And we tried the transitions you're suggesting. Well, for the first month, you need to sleep on the couch because no bed hopping. He had a really bad back. So bad that he'd actually gotten a $5,000 settlement with which we bought our hot tub. I didn't have a good back either. I'm the one who ended up having surgery. But so I was like, he tried the couch and he couldn't do it. And it was real. It's like, okay, I'll sleep on the couch. But at least we're not in the same bed. Yeah, not a good idea. And we both ended up in our room. How about the camper van? We had a van out back. We tried that. I don't know if he slept in it at all. I can't even remember. I remember us suggesting it. I don't know if we used it. He refused to go to to crash at a friend's. I'm not going to burden anybody or family. I'm not going to burden anybody. Not just because he was embarrassed. He was embarrassed. But I wasn't going to burden. So for our situation, in my situation to work, he came home 8 times. Was it 8th the last? Yeah. I think so. So 7 times where it didn't work. And I don't want to say failed. There were some of them where he came home for a week and it was to test. It wasn't to try. Some of them were he meant to try. But it wasn't working. And there needed to be a transition between her house and ours. We needed to stop being a revolving door. And he had to grow from that. And the repair had to come before we were back together as husband and wife. And I came to know and realize that that was an absolute requirement for it to work. Not something I had to require, but it wasn't going to work if we didn't do it that way because it hadn't worked 7 times in a row. And in my situation, I got lucky. I was looking for apartments and he was like, no, I'm not going to live in an apartment. I'm like, I will buy you an apartment. I mean, I will pay for 6 months. And then you have to pay for the rest. I finally decided it had to be not 3, not 6, it had to be 12 months. I didn't know what I was going to do. I'll put 6 months on a credit card. I don't use credit cards. There was a part of me that was panicking on this because I knew the only way. And in my situation, what happened was I went home for Thanksgiving and my grandma almost died in my arms on Thanksgiving morning. She probably wasn't going to. It was 6 weeks before she found out she had a UTI. And she was better, but she was 90. My mom was her full-time caregiver. And I realized my mom can't do this alone. She needs help. I had just been, fired from my job due to all of the trauma. And Chuck constantly coming in and emailing me and phoning me and interrupting me. And then just me not able to compartmentalize. I had been fired on Friday. And then Thanksgiving was Thursday. So now I'm free. It's like, I am going to go home. I'm going to gather some clothes, and I'm coming back. Chuck had just left the alienator a few weeks before Thanksgiving, and he had finally agreed to stay at the neighbor's house that he'd stayed with a few years before. But he told the neighbor, she'll have me home in a few weeks. It's like, oh shit, what am I going to do? The neighbor's not charging him. What are you going to do? I have to talk to the neighbor. And I was like, uh-oh, now he can stay at home because I'll be gone. I'll be 100 miles away at grandma's. It also helped him save face. He got to come home. I needed somebody to stay with the pets. I got to go help my grandma. I got to have a fabulous time being able to be with my grandma. I had my mom there, and so the food fairy would just bring in food while I was working. And my clothes got magically washed. It was fabulous. And I was able to work on my website and manuscript and create the base of the hero spouse at that time. So it was very positive, and every other weekend I went home. And then we started counseling, but it was just weekends, and then throughout the year I extended the time I spent at home for a while. So we had the transition though. And he was able to save face at work. My wife is away taking care of her grandma. I don't know if yours will fail or not with the no bed hopping thing. But I do know that it is a risk. And I know that it is a risk right now because he's only a year in. Now, mine came home the first time. I don't even know if it was 6 months. It might have been 5 months. It was not even 6 months from having left. He came home. He left her on August 24th, and he had moved out of the house the last weekend of April, first weekend of May. And bomb drop was March, the end of March. So you're not much further in, but a little bit. This could set up a pattern of leave, go in. So I don't want that to happen. But I also want you to know that if you can bring him into the house, it is your opportunity to learn detachment up front, because you're going to move backwards a little bit. And that's what you say, protect the progress you've made. So understand it's going to go backwards a little bit while you feel any resentment and anger and these things. And that's normal. But what the benefit of that was when Chuck came home later, and he was home, we had done a lot of the therapy work in his tidbits of time at home, learning the conflict, me learning the detachment. And then we saw a counselor during that transition time when he was at home and I was with my grandma when we would come back. And he saw the counselor on his own preparing before that. And then I came along with him after a couple of months. So I don't want you to have him coming home and thinking this is it. I don't know if you should let him come home if he doesn't have the idea of, I want to reconcile, I'm just using you. But if you think you can get him to change his mind, that could be a dangerous place to go. So I would, if you feel that you can handle it, and you need to look if you have kids, the balance of that is going to be more challenging. If it's going to be too traumatic on them, you tell him, I really want you home. But I think we need to heal first, ourselves first, and have a transition a graduated transition to you coming home. And you coming home should be our goal. And then you need to require therapy. He's not going to be ready for therapy at 1 year, most likely. That doesn't mean he shouldn't go, but you can go in and he can just find out, I guess I'm not ready for the work. He's going to get away from her and she's going to reel him back in. She's going to use emotional blackmail. I want you to understand what he's going through in it, not just you. You're both victims. You're the victim of him, but he is the victim of an emotional blackmail. And that's probably what she's going to do to him, the alienator. So for that understanding, look up the book Emotional Blackmail by Susan Forward. Keep doing your smart contact, but you can best support him by first figuring out if you can handle having him home. And if you can't, setting up that boundary and with reassurance that my goal is to have you home. But if you did come home now, I think that the things we have to do to heal and recovery, the obstacles are greater. It would be much harder, and it will be better for us, our success rate, if we did it with you at a transition place. You don't have to say, and that way, if you go back to her, that we're not leaving and losing you again. It's not going to be a second bomb drop if he goes back to her. You might feel that way. So I'm telling you now that it's not, so that you can protect yourself from feeling like it is. It's just part of his crisis and part of the jagged way these things end. And then I want you to figure out all of the mindfulness things you can do to protect yourself during his stay at home, if he's at home, during his stay at a transition place, if he's not, during his stay there, if he still stays there and keeps going with her. I want you to work on the mindfulness. That's how you protect yourself and the progress you have made, because when he gets in the house, you may not be able to do it as frequently, whatever mindful activities you're doing. And go to bed listening to a meditation. If you can't get, because it's hard to get in the daytime when you're busy or other things, fall asleep with a meditation. He's on the couch or at a separate apartment or in the basement. And so you don't have to even worry about him being there for the meditation. Use it to fall asleep to. Just do that. Use background music, those kind, they have them, 8 hours of sleep meditations. Get a sleep mask that has the earbuds in it even. And they can go that way. And you can have it Bluetoothed to your computer right next to the nightstand. Do those things to protect yourself. Get as much, set boundaries for what he can do and when he can be there. And set boundaries if he comes in the house. Set boundaries of, this is my room, this is my bedroom, and you're not allowed in here without permission. That sort of thing. Set, you might not, those are boundaries that are communicated. Physical intimacy, sex boundaries, you might want to say, we need to be healed. It's up to you. But set a boundary on what the plan for that is. Get some therapy going and get him to agree to it. And then understand that it might not work. And you might have to just go on your own. Be a good thing to go on your own. And I want you to also look up Plan A and Plan B. Google it. Marriage Builders. Plan A, Plan B. One of them, I think it's Plan A, is when you have an MLC, or it's not MLC, when you have the betraying spouse still living at home, and how you're to be. And one of them is, okay, they have refused to do what they're supposed to, or they've already left, and how you handle things in that situation. And learn about those two plans. Okay? I hope this is helpful. You have a big thing coming, and it might not go all the way where you want it to. They might pull back, and that's just part of midlife crisis. Okay? Good luck, Stacy, and I will see everybody in the next question.